Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So some interesting news coming out of the middleweight division. Chris Eubank Jr has signed a promotional contract with Kalle Sauerland at Sauerland Promotions. Obviously so far Chris Eubank Jr, he's been with several promoters, Mick Hennessy, Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn, the PBC, and now here we have him at Sauerland Promotions. And I have to say, I actually don't believe this move to be a bad idea from either party. As for Sauerland Promotions, their stable isn't as strong as it once was a few years ago. Primarily Sauerland operate in Germany, and German boxing right now isn't what it was, so their stable has become extremely depleted. So adding someone like Chris Eubank Jr is certainly a good look for him. He's got name value, he's relatively well known, and he is a decent fighter as well, so a good move by Sauerland in particular. But even for Chris Eubank Jr, I think this is a good move for him. Sauerland, historically, well, especially in the last few years, they have worked with several promoters. They have worked with Al Heyman, they've worked with Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, etc. So signing with Sauerland actually keeps Chris Eubank Jr.'s options open to, fight other guys on different networks with different promoters. So I think that's a great move for Chris Eubank Jr. as well. He keeps his options open. Theoretically, he should still be able to fight any of the middleweight champions right now with his Sauerland connections. So that's always great news as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, on signing with Sauerland, Chris Eubank Jr has vowed to take over the middleweight division. Now I don't think that's particularly realistic, but it's good to see him actually remain open for all of these fights. But anyway, Chris Eubank Jr has said the following on signing with Sauerland. I'm ready to take over the middleweight division. I want all of the champions. Murata, Charlo, Andrade, Gennady Golovkin. Put me in with any of them. If you have a belt, I'm coming for you. Those are the words of Chris Eubank Jr. Hopefully he follows through with that statement. Hopefully he actually has a pen this time around to take these fights. But all joking aside, I think it's a good move for Chris Eubank Jr. And out of all of the names that he mentioned, I think the fight for him right now is actually against the WBA champion, Ryota Murata. He holds the WBA belt, of course. Canelo Alvarez vacated that belt, and Ryota Murata got elevated to full champion. And I think stylistically, Ryota Murata versus Chris Eubank Jr would be an exceptional fight. Ryota Murata is a power puncher, he's extremely aggressive, he's there to be hit. And Chris Eubank Jr himself is an aggressive guy, likes to throw combinations, likes to get involved. I think if you put those two guys together, it would make for a brilliant, brilliant fight. So for me, I would like to see Chris Eubank Jr fight Ryota Murata for the full WBA title at middleweight. I think that would be a great fight, and I believe that is the fight that makes most sense right now, especially considering Chris Eubank Jr, I believe, still holds the WBA interim middleweight title. He won that belt against Matvey Korobov back in 2019. I'm presuming he still holds that title, so he's been going down the WBA route recently anyway, so why not fight the full WBA champion, Ryota Murata? I think that would be a great fight. But yeah, Chris Eubank Jr signs with Sauerland. There were rumours of this over this past weekend. It's now been officially confirmed. I want you guys to share your thoughts below. What do you make of this move? And also, it's going to be interesting to see where Chris Eubank Jr fights in regards to UK TV, because as far as I know, Sauerland do not have a UK TV contract. So is Chris Eubank Jr going to be fighting on Sky, Box Nation, BT, Channel 5? Where's this guy going to be fighting? It would be great if Chris Eubank Jr could get a terrestrial TV deal with Channel 5 or ITV. I think that would be brilliant, but we'll see what happens in regards to the TV deals for Chris Eubank Jr in the UK. But yeah, all in all, I think this is a pretty good move for both parties, and I'm actually quite excited to see where Chris Eubank Jr goes from here. I know he's a bit of a maligned fighter in the sport of boxing, but I quite like watching Chris Eubank Jr fight. Is he flawed? Yes, but to me, I find Chris Eubank Jr very entertaining, and if you match this guy right in the right fights, you could get some barn burners, and I believe Ryota Murata would be one of those fights. So Kalle Sauerland, if you're listening, make Ryota Murata versus Chris Eubank Jr be a great fight. Anyway, share your thoughts below. Beanie Guy Del Boy, peace.